The Autumn Harvest Festival was alive with music and laughter until a father's cry split the air. Millionaire's single dad, Michael Harrington, turned, and his heart stopped. His daughter Emily, silent since her mother's death, was gone. He pushed through the crowd, panic choking him, until he froze under a maple tree. There she was, in the arms of a stranger. But what made Michael's world collapse wasn't the sight. It was the song. The woman was singing his late wife's private lullaby when no one else could possibly know. The autumn air in Willow Creek carried the scent of roasted apples, cinnamon, and fresh hay. Michael Harrington had chosen this festival for a reason. It was the first time in nearly a year that he dared to bring his daughter, Emily, out among so many people. He had told himself it was for her sake, that maybe the laughter of children, the rustle of leaves, and the music from the main stage would spark something inside her. Since Anna's death, Emily had withdrawn into silence. At 7 years old, she hadn't spoken a single word in months. She clutched her worn bunny plush like a lifeline, eyes always distant, as though the world had betrayed her too deeply to be trusted again. Michael, a millionaire whose name carried weight in every boardroom in the city, felt powerless at home. Money could buy tutors, therapists, toys, even doctors, but it could not buy back his daughter's voice, nor the light that used to dance in her eyes. That Sunday afternoon, he dressed her in a white cotton dress and held her hand through the crowded fairgrounds. He told himself this was a step forward, a chance to give her color and joy instead of the sterile silence of their mansion. He knelt to tie his shoe near the pie contest booth, letting go of her hand just for a second. When he looked up, the world collapsed. Emily was gone. Emily! His voice cracked like thunder across the cheerful noise. He shoved past people, muttering apologies as his heart pounded against his ribs. He checked under benches, behind haystacks, between vendor stalls. The dread grew heavier with every step. This was the first time he had risked taking her out since Anna's funeral, and he had already failed. The silence Anna left behind had already swallowed his daughter once. He couldn't let it take her again. His voice grew sharper, almost frantic. Emily! Faces turned toward him, some curious, others concerned, but no one had seen her. Panic pressed like ice through his veins. He remembered every headline about children lost, every whispered warning, and cursed himself for not holding her tighter. Just as despair threatened to choke him, a stillness drew his eyes toward the orchard at the edge of the fairgrounds. Under a large maple tree, in a quiet pocket away from the noise, sat a young woman on a blanket. In her lap, nestled calmly, was Emily. Michael froze. Emily wasn't crying, wasn't trembling, wasn't screaming for him. Instead, her head rested against the woman's shoulder, her bunny clutched lazily in one hand, and the woman was singing. Michael's breath caught. The melody drifted through the crisp air, soft and aching. He knew it instantly, though he hadn't heard it since Anna's last night. The lullaby. Not a common song, not something found in books or recordings. Anna had made it up herself, a thread of comfort woven just for Emily. It had been their secret ritual, Anna cradling Emily, whispering those notes until sleep came. Michael had never sung it. He couldn't. That song had belonged only to Anna. No one else knew it. No one. Yet here was a stranger, her voice fragile but true, singing every cadence as if she had been there all along. Michael stumbled closer, fear and confusion warring inside him. The woman was ordinary at first glance, long blonde braid, pale cardigan, jeans, but there was something in her presence that calmed the chaos around her. She glanced up as he approached, meeting his eyes without fear. For a moment, time bent. His daughter, who hadn't let anyone near her since Anna's death, who recoiled even from friendly neighbors, now leaned peacefully against this stranger, her small body rising and falling with the rhythm of the lullaby. Michael knelt, his voice raw. "I'm her father." The woman gave a small nod, her hand gently stroking Emily's back. Her voice was low, almost hesitant, as though unused to speaking. She was lost. Scared. Sat down, and she came to me. Michael's eyes flicked to his daughter. Emily's little hand curled into the woman's sweater as though she had found something she couldn't let go. Michael's heart twisted, torn between gratitude and suspicion. His words came out sharper than he intended. "How do you know that song?" The woman's lips parted, but no answer came immediately. Michael leaned closer, his tone urgent. "That lullaby, how do you know it?" She lowered her gaze, voice barely above a whisper. "I just knew it might help." Emily stirred, opening her eyes for a brief moment. She looked at Michael, then back at the woman, her face calmer than he had seen in months. Slowly, almost instinctively, Emily reached out her hand, not toward him, but toward the woman's sleeve. Michael's lungs tightened as if the world had turned on its axis. The woman finally spoke her name, softly. Clara. Michael's world narrowed to three truths he could not reconcile. His daughter, safe in a stranger's arms. A lullaby only Anna should have known. And the sudden, terrifying realization that something far larger than coincidence had just unfolded beneath the maple tree. Michael carried Emily back to the car that evening, her arms still looped stubbornly around Clara's neck. Even when he tried to lift her away, Emily whimpered and clutched harder, as though letting go of this stranger meant losing something irreplaceable. Michael's chest burned with confusion and unease. No one, not teachers, not therapists, not even family, had ever managed to pierce through Emily's silence. Yet in the span of an afternoon, Clara Bennett had done what he couldn't. That alone was enough to shake him. But the lullaby? That was something else entirely. Back at the mansion, Emily drifted to sleep within minutes, her bunny tucked under her arm, a soft hum escaping her lips. It was the first sound Michael had heard from her in months. He stood at the edge of her bed, watching her chest rise and fall, then turned to find Clara waiting quietly in the hallway. Her hands were folded in front of her, her cardigan still damp from the festival grass. She seemed out of place in the marble halls of the Harrington estate, yet strangely unafraid. "How do you know that song?" Michael asked again, his voice lower now but edged with the same urgency. "It was Anna's. She never shared it, never recorded it. Not even I can sing it the way she did, and yet you." His throat tightened. "You sang it like it belonged to you." Clara's gaze dropped to the floor. For a moment, she didn't answer, and Michael felt his patience fray. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet, as though testing its strength. "Years ago, I came across a short video. It was posted on a parenting blog anonymous, just a mother holding her baby, humming that song. I didn't know her name, didn't know her story. But the song," she hesitated, emotion flickering across her face. "It stayed with me." Michael's chest constricted. He remembered, vaguely, a day when Anna had let a friend film her cradling Emily. She had laughed afterward, saying, "Just in case I'm not around someday." He had brushed it off, never imagining the clip would surface beyond their circle. He hadn't thought of it in years, and now here was this woman, carrying his wife's melody like a relic. "That video was only seconds long," Michael pressed. "How could you remember it so precisely?" Clara's fingers twisted in the fabric of her sleeve. "Because it was the first song I ever sang when I got my voice back." She looked up at him, her green eyes steady but glistening. "I lost it for 5 years. A car accident damaged my vocal cords when I was 21. Doctors told me I might never speak again, but I found that clip. I played it over and over, not for the lyrics, not even for the melody, but for the love in it. I mimicked the sound, the rhythm, until words slowly returned. That lullaby, it was my map back to life." Michael stared, torn between disbelief and something deeper. Her voice carried no performance, no embellishment, just truth. Emily's choice to cling to Clara suddenly seemed less like chance and more like recognition. One broken soul reaching for another. Emily stirred in her sleep, murmuring, and Michael's anger drained into exhaustion. He motioned for Clara to sit in the study. The fire cast warm light across leather-bound books, and the faint scent of oak hung in the air. For a long time neither spoke. Finally, Michael said, "She hasn't spoken since the funeral. Therapists couldn't reach her. I thought bringing her to the festival might help. And then, she finds you." He ran a hand across his face. "Why you?" Clara's voice trembled, though her words were firm. "Maybe because I know what silence feels like. I know what it is to live in it, to be trapped by it. Sometimes children don't need perfect words. They need someone who understands the quiet." Michael's jaw clenched. Part of him wanted to send her away, to protect Emily from any more confusion, from false hope. But another part deeper, quieter knew Emily had chosen her for a reason. He had watched his daughter turn away from neighbors, scream at doctors, recoil from anyone who tried to come close. Yet she had walked into Clara's arms on her own. That kind of trust could not be forced. When Clara rose to leave, Emily shifted in her bed, her hand reaching out in her sleep, as if searching for the presence she had just lost. Michael's chest ached. He whispered, more to himself than to Clara, "She called you Mommy." The word hung heavy in the air. Clara's eyes softened with sorrow. "I never asked for that. But maybe it means she's ready to remember what it feels like to be held." Michael stood in silence as she slipped out into the night. Alone in the dim hallway, he realized something terrifying. The fortress he had built around Emily, around himself, was cracking. And Clara Bennett, stranger, survivor, bearer of Anna's song, was the one holding the key. The following week, Clara appeared at the mansion again, not invited, not refused, simply arriving with quiet steps that somehow blended with the house's silence. Emily had begun leaving subtle clues of longing, drawing pictures of 3 figures in crayon, humming snatches of the lullaby under her breath, carrying her bunny down to the gate as if waiting. Michael told himself he should stop it, set boundaries, but each time he saw his daughter's eyes brighten at the mention of Clara's name, he felt his resolve falter. One evening, Emily developed a fever. Michael sat by her bed, restless, reading her stories, placing cool cloths on her forehead. But she tossed and whimpered, whispering for Mommy. Desperation clawed at him, that familiar helplessness he hated more than anything. In a moment of weakness, he dialed Clara's number. Within 20 minutes she was there, hair damp from the rain, breathless but calm. Emily reached for her instantly, clutching Clara's hand as if she had been waiting all along. Clara sat by the bed and began to hum the lullaby, her voice fragile but steady, and soon Emily drifted into peaceful sleep. Michael stood in the doorway, torn between gratitude and shame. Later, downstairs, he poured tea neither of them drank. His voice was rough when he finally asked, "Why do you do this? Why do you care so much about a little girl you don't know?" Clara sat with her hands wrapped around the cup, though it had gone cold. For a long moment she was silent, and then she said, "Because I lost a child too." Her words dropped like stones into the quiet. She told him of the night years ago when her infant daughter had died in a sudden complication, how she had driven home from the hospital empty-handed. "She was only a few weeks old. I held her once, and then never again." The silence after that was unbearable. My voice broke with it. Maybe that's why I lost it completely. Michael's throat tightened. He had never let himself imagine the parallels between his grief and another's, but now he saw it in her face, the hollow that mirrored his own. He surprised himself by confessing things he hadn't voiced even to Anna's family. He spoke of his failures, how work had swallowed him, how he couldn't fill the silence left in Emily's world, how he had hidden behind wealth and control, because it was the only language he knew. His voice cracked when he admitted, "When Emily clung to you, it terrified me. Not because of you, but because it showed me how much she still needs what I can't give." Clara listened without interruption, her eyes steady, her silence a space for him to unravel. When he fell quiet, she whispered, "You don't have to give her everything. You only have to be willing to let her receive it. Sometimes love arrives through another's arms." Then, almost hesitantly, she revealed something else. I wasn't just a stranger in the park. Years ago, Anna and I were friends in college. We lost touch after graduation, but she was unforgettable. She wrote to me once when she fell ill, but the letter never reached me until too late. In it, she worried about you. She said you'd try to carry everything alone, and she asked if I could help you, if fate ever allowed it. Michael stared at her, the room spinning. You knew Anna? Clara's eyes glistened. Not in the way you did, but yes. She was kind to me at a time when I was broken. She used to talk about how you steadied her. When I saw Emily that day, crying by the pond, I recognized her mother in her. And when she reached for me, I felt like Anna was asking me not to turn away this time. Michael leaned back, stunned. For years he had believed grief had left him and Emily adrift, that Anna's absence was absolute. But now Clara's presence unraveled that belief. His wife's hand, in some inexplicable way, had touched this. It wasn't a replacement, but a continuation of love. Later that night, Michael checked on Emily. She stirred in her sleep, her bunny pressed to her chest, a faint smile flickering across her face. He whispered into the dark, "You always knew what I needed, Anna." And for the first time in years, the silence of the mansion didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like the beginning of something neither he nor his daughter had dared hope for. For a brief stretch of weeks, Michael allowed himself to believe they had found some fragile rhythm. Emily laughed more freely, her drawings grew brighter, and her bunny was often left behind as she skipped toward Clara's waiting arms. Michael, though still wary, felt the walls inside him loosening. Clara didn't try to replace Anna, she simply sat beside them, present in a way he hadn't realized they needed. But healing is rarely linear. One evening, while Clara was reading aloud to Emily, her voice faltered. It caught on a word, then cracked. She pressed her throat, coughed lightly, and waved it off. Yet in the days that followed, her voice grew thinner, scratchier, until suddenly one morning no sound emerged at all. At first, Michael assumed it was a passing cold. But Clara's eyes told another story: panic, shame, the old terror of silence returning. She began to withdraw. Calls went unanswered, visits postponed. Emily sat on the porch step each afternoon, bunny in her lap, whispering, "Where's Clara?" Into the wind. When Michael pressed, Clara wrote in a notebook, "I don't want to hurt her by disappearing again. But I don't know how to stay if I can't speak." The words cut him deeply. For Emily, the silence was a prison she had lived in since Anna's death. For Clara, it was a prison she had once escaped but feared falling back into, and now both were colliding. One night, Emily slipped a drawing onto Michael's desk, a picture of Clara with two wings, one whole, one broken. Underneath, in uneven letters, she had scrawled, "Fix her." Michael sat for a long time staring at that simple command, his heart aching. He could fix contracts, rebuild companies, turn numbers into empires, but he didn't know how to fix what Clara had lost. Still, he knew he couldn't let her vanish. Not again. He drove to her apartment on a rainy evening. Clara opened the door hesitantly, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, eyes rimmed red. Sheet music lay torn across the floor. Michael didn't speak. He simply stepped inside and sat beside her. When she tried to write another apology, he stopped her hand gently. "You don't need a voice to be part of us," he said softly. His words seemed to tremble in the air. Clara's eyes filled, and she covered her mouth with her hand, as though holding back both sobs and a scream that wouldn't come. It was then, in that fragile silence, that Clara finally revealed what she had held back. She scribbled on the page and pushed it toward him. "I was there at the hospital, the night Anna passed." Michael froze. She went on writing, "I didn't mean to keep it from you. I was visiting a friend when Anna saw me. She asked me to stay. I held her hand in her last hours," she said. Clara paused, tears smudging the ink. She turned the page and wrote the words slowly. "Don't let him close his heart. Tell him to let Emily be loved." Michael's chest constricted. For years he had carried guilt that he wasn't enough, that Anna's last words had been lost to the silence of machines. And now here they were, carried across time by the very woman he had resisted. His throat tightened. "She told you that?" Clara nodded, unable to speak, but the truth was clear in her eyes. Michael leaned forward, his voice cracking. "And I almost failed her. I almost pushed you away." His hands trembled as he reached for Clara's, holding them tightly. "I hear her now. Through you, through Emily. I won't shut the door again." In that moment, Emily appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes from sleep, clutching her bunny. She padded over, climbed into Clara's lap, and placed Clara's hand over her own small chest. "Heartbeat," she whispered softly, the first clear word she had spoken in months. Clara gasped soundlessly, pressing her forehead to the child's hair, tears streaming freely. Michael's eyes burned as he watched, realizing that Anna's plea had come true. Emily was being held, and for the first time they were all being healed. The storm of doubt had broken. The fortress Michael built was crumbling, not in ruin, but in renewal. Silence no longer felt like emptiness. It felt like a space where love had finally found room to speak without needing words at all. Spring sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Willow Creek's renovated community hall, the once empty building now alive with the sound of children. Michael stood at the back, his hands folded, watching Emily move among a circle of other children who had once carried silence like a burden. Today they hummed, tapped rhythms, even laughed freely. And at the center of it all was Clara. Her voice, though still fragile at times, had returned with steadiness. She no longer forced it. It flowed, warm and patient, guiding the children in gentle exercises of breath and song. Above the door hung a new sign, "The Voice Within." The center had grown from a seat of pain into something larger than any of them imagined. Michael had used his wealth not for another tower or investment, but for this sanctuary. The foundation carried both his name and Clara's, though Clara insisted it was Anna's spirit that truly founded it. On the far wall, Emily had painted a mural with help from the others, open hands releasing notes into the sky, colors swirling like freedom. Beneath it she had written in careful block letters, "Every silence has a song." But the truest breakthrough came weeks before, on a quiet afternoon at home. Michael had been spreading out a picnic blanket in the garden when Emily, now more open, had run to him clutching two small leather bracelets. One bore the words, "You found me when I was lost." The other read, "You found us both." She slipped one onto Clara's wrist, fastening it with trembling fingers, and wore the other herself. Then she turned to her father, eyes bright, and for the first time since Anna's funeral, she spoke in a full, steady voice. "Mom says thank you for singing to me." The words struck Michael like lightning, his breath catching in his throat. Clara's tears had spilled silently, her hands shaking as she pressed Emily close. Now in the sunlight of the hall, Michael thought of that moment as the turning point, the day his daughter's voice returned, carried on the wings of both grief and grace. It was not a replacement for Anna, but a continuation of her love, passed on in lullabies and in Clara's unwavering presence. After the opening ceremony, the crowd lingered, reluctant to leave. Michael led Clara and Emily to the small stage at the front. "There's something they need to hear," he said softly. Clara hesitated, then nodded. She took Emily's hand, and together they began the lullaby. The room hushed instantly. Clara's voice carried the familiar melody, steady and reverent, and then Emily joined in, her young voice threading through the notes like sunlight breaking through clouds. Two voices, meeting in the middle, carrying Anna's memory forward. No one clapped at first. Many wiped tears, some simply bowed their heads as though in prayer. When the last note faded, Emily giggled and bowed shyly, and the hall erupted with applause and laughter. Michael felt something ease inside him, a weight he had carried for too long lifting at last. Later that evening, the three of them sat beneath the maple tree that had once been the scene of fear and confusion. This time it was quiet, not with loss but with peace. Paper lanterns floated upward into the twilight, glowing softly like fragments of hope set free. Emily leaned against Clara's arm, clutching her bunny with one hand and Clara's bracelet with the other. She whispered, "Now I have two voices. Mommy's lullaby and Clara's heart." Michael's chest tightened, but instead of pain, it was gratitude. He wrapped his arms around them both, his voice low. "We're whole now. Finally." And in that moment, Michael understood what Anna had asked of him in her final hours. Not to be everything for Emily, but to let her be loved, to let her voice be carried forward. Through Clara, through their daughter, through the sanctuary they had built, Anna's legacy was alive. It was no longer a house of silence, but a home of song. In the end, Michael learned that love does not vanish with loss, it transforms. Through Clara's quiet strength and Emily's brave whisper, the silence that once haunted their home became a song of healing. What began as fear beneath a maple tree grew into a family reborn and a sanctuary where other children could also find their voices. It was never about replacing Anna, but carrying her love forward in new and unexpected ways. Their story reminds us that even in brokenness, second chances can bloom, and that sometimes the deepest bonds are born from shared scars. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe to Soul Stirring Tales, where every tale is a reminder that love in its truest form always finds a way home.